Everyone, welcome back to our introduction to Photoshop. Now last time we took a basic look at the user interface of Photoshop. We looked at some of the tools you can use and we looked at some of the menus. Now this week's lesson is a much shorter lesson, but it is probably the most important one. And what we're going to be looking at today are layers. Now what layers are a system of organization and working in Photoshop. I like to liken this to having a background, which could be either an original photo or a blank white sheet of paper, and then you take transparency sheets and you lay them on top of that, and each time you put one down, you're creating a new layer, and whichever one is physically on top is visually on top in Photoshop. So what we have here is a digital painting that I did of myself a few years ago as a demonstration for a self-portrait project with my digital design students. Now, over here on the right side of the screen is our main menu of actions, history, navigator, such that we looked at before. Now down here near the bottom there's one that says layers. If I click on that, it gives us this small window which you can expand for easier viewing. I happen to have quite a bit of layers on here. Now the thing I want to primarily talk about here is layer management. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to quickly just turn all these layers invisible so we can look at them a little bit at a time. And I'm going to pull the background layer up. Now this is what I originally started with. Now this form of digital painting it's an easier version because you're not going straight from nothing. You have colors, you have the image to work with, so you don't need to start from scratch. And it's a great way for beginning graphic designers or computer artists to really take a look at how to do things. So you'll look at the bottom layer that is in blue here, and it says background. It's in italics, and there's a little padlock there. It's locked. Background layers are always locked. So what I have here is a number of layers, and aside from one that says layer 1, they're all named. Now there are a couple things that are kind of layers. There are different tools that are used, hue/saturation, brightness/contrast, but all the rest are literally just digital painting layers, and they are one on top of another. Now when you create a new layer, you get it just basically saying layer 1. And if you're going to be using a number of layers, it is very helpful to change the name of this to what you're going to be working on. So for layer 1, I want to change this to white background. This is what I'll call it. All you have to do is double click where it says layer 1, and you can type in your name for it and hit enter. So I have white background. So as I started building this, I created layers that have a different need. So I called this one skin shadow. It honestly should just be, oops, sorry about that. It should just be skin. Originally, the skin and the shadow either were two different layers or they were going to be two different layers, and I decided to just go ahead and make it one layer. So if I make this visible, you can see this. Now, with the white background turned on, this is all that there is to it. Now, this goes through and it shows all the things that I did with the skin, and in some cases, like where the eyes were, I didn't have to be super careful because the eyes were going to be above that. Now, when I looked at this originally on the computer screen, it didn't look too dark, but when I would try to print it out or when I would look at it on different screens, it became very dark. So I changed some things like the hue saturation. I made it less orange. and eventually at the end I made it brighter. For right now I'm going to leave that brightness off. Now the next thing I went ahead and did were the eyes/mouth. And I put these on the same layer because they don't touch and I don't have to worry about them overlapping. So when I digitally painted those, they literally are on top of the skin layer. They're above 1, 2, 3. So they will appear on top of that skin layer. So all of those little bits where the eye is missing or where the mouth has been covered over, boom, they're now covered with that layer. Now I moved into the white shirt area because it's the next thing on top, and I like to work from what's on the bottom and moves up to the top. So above the skin, I could have done hair. I decided to go with the shirts. So I filled that in. It's just a basic fill with the paint bucket, and it overlaps where that green shirt is. Well, there are shadows in that shirt, so I put some of those in, and it doesn't show as much on there. Now the green shirt layer is now the next one up, and this is just going to be a basic outline of the shirt that is then filled in with green. It doesn't look like the shirt much anymore, does it? So I added the shadows and the highlights. And really, I think it's just the shadows. I think the lightest green on there perhaps is the lightest green is just the shirt itself. So now it looks back to being like a shirt. Now I put the hair in, and I wasn't honestly too careful with this part. I will admit that. This is the eyebrows and it's little bits of the hair. So if I take off the face, that's kind of creepy. And I put the white background on. Oops. Dang it. That's how much of the hair. There's a little bit of the beard, my eyebrows, and a little bit of the hair. It's kind of weird. Now I put the hair highlight on, which was the rest of it. Now, from this view, that all just looks black. We plop that skin back on. Now you can't see any of the background, so I can click this on and off and you won't notice. Now I lightened it. So now the face is easier to see. The shirt is easier to see. The hair all still kind of looks very, very dark, but that's partially because my hair is very, very dark. So these are all of these layers. They work one on top of the other, and if you name them, you can manage them much easier. Now, Photoshop was designed with layers in mind, because if you are doing anything from editing a photo to doing digital illustration with Photoshop, you want to have the ability to make changes not all onto one thing where if you make a mistake, forget it, you're done. If I did this all in the background layer and I screwed something up, I can only go back so far without having to redo everything. This way, hey, if I make a mistake on the shirt layer, I can fix the shirt layer and not have to fix everything else. So layer management is critical. It's not a difficult thing to do at all, but it is the most important thing. So next time we're going to get into some photo editing. We're going to start getting into using Photoshop for what it is. We've gone through the UI, we've gone through layer management. Now it's time to make these things work for us. So until next time, this is Baka, and I'll see you guys later. Bye.